Hi there, Indycar fans, it's Gordon Ross here. I'm sorry this is a very late broadcast, but I'm using a new phone, one that I bought with the money donated by Indycar fans, so this is the first time I've used this particular phone and its new camera. And I'm doing it at night time just to prove that it can be done even in the dark. So this show is a short one, it's just a test really, but I thought I should actually say something, come up with some news for you for this evening. So the news is very simple. Having looked into the powers which Westminster are wanting to retain as part of what they call national frameworks. In other words, these are laws which they want to roll out across the entire UK, including Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. One of them, and I think this is a critical one, is a law which deals with onshore hydrocarbons. Now, for those of you who don't know what onshore hydrocarbons are, that means oil under the ground on land or possibly gas. So this deals directly with the issue of fracking. If this power is not brought to Scotland, if it's given to Westminster and taken away from us, then the Westminster government could decide to legalise fracking in Scotland. That's as simple as I can make it. If the law is not retained by Westminster, but is actually kept by Scotland, if we succeed in getting this law, and the bill which the Scottish Parliament has been debating, the EU Continuity Bill, would bring that law to Scotland permanently and would enshrine it in Scottish law. In the Scottish legal system, as soon as that happens, the sovereign will of Scottish people would then be in power, if you like. We would have the power to control fracking in Scotland forever. We would not have to fear the British government deciding to steamroll or something through in an effort to force fracking on an unwilling Scotland, one which has voted about 98% against fracking. There's been a huge, almost as big an outcry against fracking as there is against nuclear weapons. Now, interestingly, some of the other powers which are being sought by Westminster, which the Scottish Government should get, also control specifically the water supply. The purity of the drinking water supply, the preservation of water courses, the cleanliness of the water, and the control of pollution in the environment. Now, all of these things together can be used to stop fracking, because we could control hydrocarbons on land and we could also control pollution and the cleanliness of the water courses. So fracking could be banned forever as long as these powers come to Scotland. But only if the Scottish Continuity Bill is written up quickly, passed quickly through Holyrood and signed off into law and becomes an act. And as soon as that happens, anything Westminster does after that is meaningless, because it cannot be challenged. And Scottish law would be paramount in this case. It's the law as it applies in Scotland. If you go south of the border, then it's English law that applies. And English law does not apply north of the border. So a lot of these things are very important to us, but the primary one I wanted to tell you about is there is definitely a specific clause, a specific power, which controls onshore hydrocarbons. That means fracking for gas, shale oil and shale gas on land, and any other form of gas, methane extraction or other hydrocarbons that are present, like coal for example is another one. It would control the use of coal mining and strip mining as well. All of these things are something which the Scottish Parliament should decide, not Westminster. So that's the situation as it stands at the moment. Also, it's important to realise that the Continuity Bill is a challenge to the sovereignty of Westminster as well, because the Continuity Bill would establish the sovereignty of the Scottish people, and it would establish the sovereignty of Scots law over everything. If the British government deliberately tried to steamroller through anything to do with fracking, anything to do with Brexit without the consent of the sovereign Scottish people, they would be breaking the terms of the treaties of union in law. So it's very important that this bill is passed in Holyrood to protect our rights as sovereign Scots, as the only sovereign people actually in the United Kingdom. who have the power ourselves to end the union if we don't like what's going on. But remember that if the British government does try to force the repeal bill through without our consent, it is a breach of the Act of Union. If it's a breach of the Act of Union, then Scotland can have a referendum, but not on independence. It would have a referendum on ending the union. In other words, it would have a dissolution referendum. The evidence would be there. The British government would have broken the terms of the Treaties of Union of 1707, broken them and smashed them and left them lying on the ground and then trampled them underfoot. So if the British government dares to do anything, like try to pass the repeal bill without our consent, then we have grounds for calling an immediate referendum. And that's my understanding of the legal situation. If there are other people out there who are more knowledgeable than I am, I've done a fair amount of reading recently, and Pat Lee was good enough to publish an article on this very subject, which explains it in great detail. And I've read some other articles from other people, and I've also taken some advice from political science lecturers and other people in other places. But it seems to me that we've reached the crisis point now in Scottish politics. And the crisis point is, if the British government steamrollers the repeal bill through in order to rush us through to Brexit without our consent, then we have grounds immediately for a referendum to dissolve the union. It's as simple as that. So it's an important milestone that we have reached in Holyrood, and one of the reasons why the hands off our Parliament demonstration is so important is to make these points publicly on the steps of Holyrood ourselves. Not the politicians doing this, but the people of Scotland making the point that we will assert our right, our sovereign right, to protect our Parliament and to have and not to have Brexit forced upon us by Westminster against the will of the sovereign people of Scotland. So that's where we're at. Anyway, I have to go and pick up one of my young family members this evening, but I thought it was worth trying out the new phone just to let you know that I've got it set up, and thank you all very much for donating to this. The rest of the money which has not been spent on this new phone and new camera equipment is going to be used a little bit at a time through each month to pay for the data stream that I'll be using to transmit the programmes in the future. Oh, and one final little piece at the end of the show, just a shout out to Sir Sean Connery. Thanks very much, Sir Sean, for mentioning me on your Twitter feed the other day. It's nice to be recommended by somebody as famous as Sir Sean Connery. The news that Sir Sean had mentioned me came from a friend of mine who posted it online yesterday, and I tell you, nobody was more surprised than me. It was quite a day actually, because it was the same day that Nicola Sturgeon and Mary Black were voted the most influential women in the UK, and on the same day I got Sean Connery name dropping me on Twitter. So it's been a bit of a surreal day, but thank you to everybody for all your support over the last few months, and I hope to be able to do this justice. On the back of all these things that have been happening this week, I've been invited to take part in a television programme being made by an Italian production company who are trying to explain to the Europeans what grassroots independence movement is all about. So I've been approached and I've agreed to participate in the making of this programme. And I think they're going to interview a lot of people from the independence movement, the grassroots movement, people who are not politicians but who have risen to prominence just through their activities in this movement where we're trying to fight our way to independence, but not as politicians, but just as ordinary people. So hopefully I'll have something more to tell you about that once the details have been arranged. So you might be seeing my mug on Italian television, which would be even more surreal than being name dropped by Sean Connery. Anyway, listen, have a lovely weekend everybody. I hopefully will have another show for you late on Sunday afternoon, so I look forward to seeing you then. So bye for now.